that's good for them. Okay, so thank you very much, and wish you all the best. Okay, thank you, sirs.
Thank you.
So, yeah, we have actually 5 minutes left in the session. So yeah, so it's almost 5 hours 7 minutes now from the morning. So continuous sessions are going on. So we'll just very interesting session next, which is upcoming. So we'll talk about it. So thank you guys. Thank you very much. Then we will just move to the next presentation. I would like to invite Dr. Allan Klein. I think I made, yeah, Deep, you made him presenter already, right? Okay, so we have, I think, 5 more minutes, but we can start with the introductions. Today, let me give a quick introduction to Allan Klein. Yeah. So Allan Klein, thank you. So what is the topic we are talking today is how supply chain works in Nigeria. So this is something which is very interesting. Okay, so the participants, please stay tuned. So you can hear somebody, supply chain expert from Nigeria. So he's talking about how the supply chain work in Nigeria and what are the key challenges and what is the way forward. It's a completely different way to think. So once we know about Nigeria as one of the most important country in Africa, so we can see how the whole Africa is moving forward. And this gives a tremendous opportunity for everybody across the globe about join hands with Africa to take it to the next level. Okay, so let me give introduction to Allan Klein. Allan Klein, Dr. Allan Klein. Okay, so General Manager Operations and Risk and Quality Management Systems, okay, from Nigeria. So Allan Klein, an ISO QMS 9001-2015 lead auditor and a teacher at Lagos State Polytechnic, boasts over 10 plus years of supply chain expertise, renowned for saving millions through exceptional negotiation and strategy planning. Allan excels in procurement, logistics, inventory management, collaborating with diverse global teams for optimal results. And I have seen so many posts from Allan, very motivating. How supply chain works in Nigeria and the perspective of Dr. Allan Klein. Dr. Allan Klein, over to you. So you can start with a quick introduction from your side, and then you have all 1 hour session left to you. Yeah. Your microphone is mute.
Thank you very much, Sheikh. Thank you very much. Nice to be here. We're discussing supply chain in Nigeria and Africa. And then, of course, we cannot just discuss supply chain in Nigeria without mentioning Africa. So this conversation is around what happens, the overview in Africa, and then in Nigeria on the Global Supply Chain Excellence Summits organized by Data Labs. All right, so okay, so of course, we are not here actually to define supply chain. A lot has been said, a lot of conversations had happened since yesterday when this summit began. So we'll just be focused. So I am assuming that we are all abreast with what supply chain is and what it is globally. But here in Africa, of course, supply chain is growing rapidly. The profession in Africa is growing rapidly, driven by economic growth, urbanization, and increasing trade. And so its importance, there's a recognition of its importance in driving business success and wealth creation, which includes distribution across the continents, especially still talking Africa. And of course, we all know that Africa is an import-driven continent, largely import-driven continent. And then because of increasing urbanization and the retail consumer economy, Africa is a fantastic place for supply chain because unfortunately it does more of consumption, less with productive activities, with skyrocketing populations. So it's a country that's, it's a continent that is more into importations, practically everything, less productive activities. And you would agree with me that importation is an aspect of supply chain, which is logistics. So there is a lot of, under supply chain, logistics is a very big aspect. And here in Africa, logistics is a very major aspect of supply chain here because most things here are imported. And so there's a lot going on with logistics, with our ports here in Africa. Africa has over 54 countries with over 1.5 billion persons, and yet it is projected to add another 1 billion in less than 25 years. And putting the figures, matching the figures to 2.5 billion by 2050. However, with these figures, it still presents opportunities for supply chain profession and businesses. Because I did mention earlier that it's an import-driven continent, and being an import-driven continent, logistics is a big business here. And so here in Africa, you have litany of logistics companies, which I can immediately remember the names. And these companies are also helping in last mile deliveries because of trying to reach remote areas due to network challenges. So logistics is the main thing in Africa when it comes to supply chain because it is import driven, and then we do lots of consumption. These also present serious challenges. Having said that, it has opportunity for supply chain profession and then for businesses, but it also has serious challenges for the African continent, especially with the exponential increase in population. Like I mentioned, that by 2050, we are looking at a population hitting 2.5 billion people without much to cater for this number of persons. However, we would look at these challenges and see how, whilst it is a challenge, it also presents opportunities for the African continent and its residents. So it is known to have scarce resources with lots of political instabilities. And then we'll be looking at a few of these challenges because we are looking at overview of the supply chain management in Africa. One of such is infrastructure. There's inadequate transportation network because of bad route, poor route conditions, and limited storage facilities. To start with, to have a storage facility in Africa comes with a lot of money because the global currency is a dollar, and the exchange rate in Africa is something out of the blues, something very, very tough on the African continent. And so it becomes very expensive maintaining a storage facility. Electricity is a problem as well because for storage facility, you need to get electricity and so many other things. So the road network also is a big problem. So these are part of the problems or challenges in Africa. Infrastructure, corruption, of course, corruption is everywhere in every continent, but we are talking Africa. And so bribes, extortions, and other forms of corruption delay shipment and increase cost. So meaning if you intend to invest in Africa, you have to factor kickbacks. It has to be factored because if you are assuming that, oh, this costs XYZ and ideally it should hit the desired consumers, you might not find it exactly so because you might be required to make some payments that are not in Africa. It is called PR, public relations, or else they will look for reasons, excuses, and so many other things to delay your shipment. And that's why I keep saying that supply chain in Africa. Africa is largely logistics, and if you are not very careful, your cargo can be impounded for flimsy reasons and excuses. So corruption is a big problem here in Nigeria. We call it wahala. So it's a big wahala for you. Wahala means problem. So, and then political instability impacts supply chain poorly too. Conflict, government changes, policy uncertainties. These disrupt supply chain management. How? You have a government who is probably friendly to your business. And then this, because of course it is democracy. So a new government or administration can come in and then bring in policies, or if you didn't support or chose to stay neutral, at some point, some of these administrations come in and feel that you didn't properly support them during electioneering. And so this can impact you negatively. So, but the best of it, of course, is complete neutrality and staying to what we call here in Africa, to your lane, minding your business. So political instability, like in other places, like in Mali, like in Burkina Faso, like in Niger, and other African countries where you have coup d'etat and all that, could also mar your businesses, because the government can decide, especially when coups happen, what happens? They tell you borders are closed and all that. So if you were expecting shipment and all that, then you find it very tough because the borders are closed. And if you have perishables, these goods or items could actually be perished on the road. So these are part of the challenges on the African continent. Limited technology adoption. So most things are still done manually, and digitalization is still a problem here. Why? For example, it is expected that most businesses take up for warehousing and inventory management. You do what we call RFID, radio frequency identification. That is the one you use your barcode to pick and pack your warehousing. And so this is to help you seamlessly pick, then the system store it in the computers very effortlessly, and then the data are quite accurate. But because it is expensive, some of the things are expensive to procure, like I did mention, dollar to different currencies in Africa, and the lack of having one currency in Africa is also a challenge. Like in the Europe, where they have euro, it is just one currency. Here is multiple currency. In Nigeria, you have naira. Other places you have the France, different cities and all that. So because of these exchange rates, variations and all that, to procure these things, the cost of bringing them in as well, like I did mention that there are kickback, corruption and all that, makes it difficult. And then inflation too in these African countries are making it somewhat difficult. So people just resort to manual processes. And then this slows down efficiency. What about skill gap? Limited training and expertise in supply chain management. So number one is that not everyone actually understands that supply chain is a profession. Not everyone actually sees it that way. People still somewhat in Africa feel that supply chain, some don't even understand that you can actually go to the school, learn supply chain, run degree courses, even have your postgraduate degrees on supply chain. So people don't really see, you see, most businesses, we'll get down to that. Most African businesses are run by SMEs, small companies. And then these companies don't really have supply chain department or procurement person. The same man is doing procurement, the same man is doing accounting, the same man is doing practically everything. So they do not really know that there is a specialized skill called supply chain. So these are part of the issues. And then border crossing. Complexities and delays at border crossing can slow down shipments. I did mention this earlier as well, in that, you know, there's security, there's that Africa or sub-regional cohesion and pact is usually lacking. And sometimes they seem to be at each other's neck. And envying each other. These are part of the issues that could mar supply chain in Africa, especially with regards to movement of goods and services. Inventory management, inefficient inventory management leads to stockouts and overstocking, which I did mention because of lack of digitization and adoption of manual processes. So limited technology could actually empower inventory management. And because we must understand, to digress a little, that inventory management is a big aspect of supply chain, because if you do not manage your inventory properly, it can actually wreck your business, because inventory is an investment. Inventory is finance. Inventory is money. And so a company's inventory that is properly managed can actually destroy the company, because that is a resource. That's an asset for the company. So that posed a challenge here in Africa as well, a big challenge actually. And then theft and a lot of other things. So, but if you have technology, you have a camera being cheap and all that, RFID and all that, it becomes difficult for theft, for lifting and all that to ever happen. So these are part of the challenges: supplier selection, difficulty finding reliable and quality suppliers, because reliable and quality suppliers has to do with people giving you what you have actually asked for. So, but because of widespread corruption and all of that, it becomes easier and more of a day-to-day thing for people to easily try to cheat, deceive their customers. These are part of the challenges on the African continent, even though they are bound in every other continent. But because of this conversation is on Africa, that is why. It's not to say that this is synonymous to Africa, but corruption is a big problem here in Africa. But having said all that, I did say earlier that yes, there are challenges, serious challenges, like we have mentioned, but there are also opportunities, and these opportunities abound too, much as the challenges abound, and they are serious and far-reaching, no doubt about that. The opportunities too abound, and no doubt about that too. We have growing economies. In Africa, 54 countries, most of these economies are growing. Increasing demand for goods and services have continued to drive effective supply chain. Because I did say also, and as a fact that Africa is more import-driven, because it is import-driven and you have a consumer society or people, there is a demand for goods and services, which has also, improved supply chain, because supply chain is the demand of goods and services, and to ensure that it gets to the final consumers or users. That is the shortest and easiest way of defining supply chain to a layman. So if that is so, and Africans, we want more of importation, it means that in Africa, a lot more of supply chain is happening, even though supply chain deals with production and productive activities actually, because, supply chain start from planning, forecasts and all that, warehousing, shipping and all that. So productive activities has to happen too for supply chain to thrive. So they work hand in hand, but here in Africa, it is more of importations. And then also part of that, so the economies, there are more people requesting for these things because of urbanization, and the middle class strata is also coming up, and so people are demanding for more and more. And then infrastructure development. Having said earlier that connecting to remote areas is a problem, there has been some effort in ensuring that most places are reached. So there has been investment in transportation networks, logistic hubs, and ports. Today, especially in Nigeria, you have FTZs, free trade zones. People are building, even in the film industry, people are building things like film villages and all that. These hubs are helping supply chain, because you move items there, logistics is happening, warehousing is happening, and then inventory is happening. Procurement negotiations are happening in these places. So infrastructure development is really taking shape on the continent, and technology adoption too is growing, because most companies or individuals are using digital tools and platforms to enhance their supply chain visibility and efficiency. Some companies are already doing the RFID. Some are able to get NVR cameras and DVR cameras. So, and this has been aiding their planning and their forecast. So supply chain, the technology adoption like IoT, like AI is also on the rise here on the African continent. There is regional integration initiative like AFCT, FTA, aim to simplify trade and reduce barriers. The African leaders are coming together to see how they can form a united and common currency, okay, to be like the euro, such that it is easier for me to move from point A to point B, meaning from Ghana to Nigeria, Nigeria to South Africa, something that can unite Africans on in business. Talent development, increasing focus on supply chain education and training programs. These are now happening. People are gradually understanding that supply chain is a specialized skill. It's a skill that can be learned in the universities, polytechnics, and colleges of education. It can be learned. There are so many academic centers for supply chain certification programs on the African continent, one of which you can see on my platform. Most of them were gotten here on the African continent, Nigeria precisely, and some cut across Africa. And then innovation, opportunities for innovative solutions such as mobile-based supply chain management. What about diversification? Growing importance of intra-African trade and regional value chains. All of these are currently happening on the African continent, and these are the opportunities I did mention, that everything is not just about challenge. There are also opportunities that can attract FDI. So if you intend to do business on the African continent, it is just for you to understand the aspect where you'll be asked to pay more, that even when they are not the right thing, you just have to pay it. It is called PR here, but there are opportunities for you to invest and make your money, and then also improve the African continent and its people. But there are trends too: digitalization, increasing adoption of digital technology such as blockchain, IoT, and AI, sustainability, growing focus on sustainable and responsible supply chain practices, regionalization, increasing importance of regional supply chain and trade agreements. So there have been trade agreements in inter and intra within countries and outside the country, even outside African country, outside the African continent, with China, Russia, and some other countries. So supply chain on the African continent, we can see the trend so far that things are really moving in the right direction. That is also creating the opportunities. E-commerce, growing demand for e-commerce and last mile delivery solutions. Like today in Africa, we hear Jumia, we hear Kunga, and all sorts of names like that. And these businesses help with you staying in your apartment and requesting buy things online, and then it is delivered to you wherever you are, regardless of where you are. Last mile deliveries, people are using motorbikes. Here in Africa, especially in Nigeria, it is called Okada. People are using Okada to deliver to people wherever they are. So now there are more online shoppings. You can go online on Facebook, Instagram, to procure things like shoes. You can buy office furniture. You can buy home equipment and appliances. You know, so many things you can actually. People are negotiating and doing businesses through online means, partnerships, collaborations between public and private sectors to improve supply chain infrastructure, relative stability, stable political atmosphere. Of course, earlier we said, oh, there are issues, cool details and all that. But today too, you would agree with me, gentlemen and ladies, that Africa too has embraced democracy and other forms of government that is suitable for them. And then it's to a large extent working for them, increasing awareness to peaceful change of governance and political stability, especially in Nigeria, Ghana, South Africa, and the Northern African countries like Egypt and Morocco and Tunisia. It has been somewhat peaceful compared to what it used to be. So now it is quite relatively peaceful to do business in Nigeria, Ghana, and these other countries, South Africa, because it is certain that, you know, government change of government will come in seamlessly almost without issues. Of course, there are legal issues and all that, which does not directly impact businesses. So these are trends. These are the way forward. Sorry, guys. Maybe after the slides, we can ask questions. I'm also looking at your time. So we will give opportunities for questions or for insights or inputs as well. So also we now have critical industries you might need to look out for when you're coming to Africa. When you're coming to do business, you have supply chain at the back of your mind to implement supply chain in Africa or to do anything that is supply chain related here. The critical industries are agriculture, critical for food security and economic growth. Because of vast land in Africa, on the African continent, agriculture is a mainstay too. It's also a mainstay in that you can have vast land to plant, to, you know, do lots of things that will provide for the African people, and then you'll still make your money. So for the supply chain, how does it impact supply chain? So, which is movement of goods and services. Food is part of goods that can be moved from one place to another. Mining, significant for exports and economic development. These are opportunities that Africa presents to the world. And then manufacturing is a growing sector here, particularly in countries like South Africa, Nigeria. Manufacturing is really taking a strong root here in Nigeria, South Africa, and Egypt. And then retail. I did mention earlier that we are having an expansion in middle class, which has driven demands for consumer goods. So the population is growing. Somehow you look at the population as disadvantageous. You also look at it as advantageous to an extent too. It's a two-edged sword. It's quite good on one side, and in different contexts, it also poses or presents challenges. So on the side where it presents opportunities, it also helps to increase the number of people who will be involved in productive and supply chain related activities, meaning that more people will request for goods, more people will go into productive activities and all that. All of these happenings are chains of activities, which it is largely supply chain. Pharmaceuticals, critical for health care and medicine distribution. Some will say some pharmaceutical companies are leaving Nigeria, but also you have to know that some are coming in too, and then it's also encourage the local guys to increase and to find opportunities in the areas where the multinationals had a few of them had left. So it's also encouraging the local players to see what they can do to up their game or their ante. So, but what is the way forward for the African continent? It is to partner with local experts to navigate complex environments. It is to invest in technology and digitalization, develop local skills and talents, which Data Lab is currently doing, because with trainings like this on the African continent, skills and talents will be developed. focus on sustainability and social responsibility, and finally build flexible and adaptable supply chain strategies. So with these suggestions to fellow Africans and friends from other parts of the world, it will really be helpful. And this provides a glimpse into the complex and dynamic supply chain profession in Africa. If you would like more specific information, Data Labs and I will be available to provide this. So the next is the Nigerian supply chain. What is supply chain in Nigeria? So I wanted to run us through the African continent, but what about Nigeria? Overview of supply chain in Nigeria. Nigeria is the biggest country on the African continent with regards to population, number of people, not landmass. So with regards to population, Nigeria has over 230 million people. Like in many other countries of the world, supply chain is practiced in Nigeria and it is accepted, is widely accepted, even though some don't really understand that this can be a skill learned. But a large chunk of persons, a great number of people are beginning to understand that, and universities are now having supply chain classes, programs, lectures, degrees, postgraduate degrees, private and government institutions for supply chain. Because wherever there is buying and selling and distribution, there is supply chain. Wherever there is demand and supply or human needs, where there is exchange of goods and services or trade by barter, then that is supply chain management. So, of course, like I said, I'm sure we all are aware to a large extent what supply chain it is, but to further expatiate or put emphasis, it is wherever there is demand and supply or human needs or exchange of goods and services, either by trade, by barter or whatever means, it is supply chain. So supply chain management predates most countries like Nigeria and has always been with the human creation, and so is with the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Supply chain predates most countries because from the earliest, people had always exchanged in buying and selling. Nigeria is a country of over 230 million people, the most populous Black nation in the world, and the sixth most populated, with a population growth put at over 250 million persons by 2050. And so supply chain is huge in Nigeria, has really gained traction and evolved over the years, especially due to population, urbanization, and technology. Nigeria has witnessed 25 years uninterrupted democracy after a long military rule. These has therefore brought relative stability and certainty. As power transfer from one administration to another has been stable and almost certain. So now, due to these factors and others, supply chain has thrived in all sectors of the Nigerian economy, especially with the petroleum industry, which remains the mainstay of the Nigerian economy, which requires a great deal of supply chain. Of course, oil production is a productive capacity. And you remember, I did say that wherever you have production, you have supply chain. And wherever you have supply chain, you have production. Wherever you have consumption, you have supply chain. Wherever you have supply chain, you also have consumption. Nigeria, with a GDP of $472.6 billion, has an informal trade and MSMEs, that is medium, small scale enterprises, which is about 40 million here in Nigeria, account for about 90% of the trade volume of businesses. Yes, that's big. That's big. 50% of the country's GDP and 80% of the employment in Nigeria. So the informal sector and the small scale businesses account for about 80% employment in Nigeria and accounts for about 50% of the country's GDP, gross domestic product. It tells you that it points the drivers of Nigeria's economy so easily from these figures or from this data. So the Nigerian economy contributes, so these MSMEs and the informal sector of the Nigerian economy contribute half of the overall GDP and the biggest employer of labor in Nigeria. So that taken or given, due to MSMEs contributing largely to the Nigerian economy, along with the petroleum industry, 230 million population, busiest seaports and airports in Africa, especially West Africa. It is therefore safe to say Nigeria has the largest supply chain activities on the African continent and in many other countries around the world, and has fared tremendously well. So, like I said, due to the population being the busiest seaport, it tells you that Nigeria has the biggest supply chain activities on the African continent. Therefore, the profession is on the rise, with many higher institutions of learning now being accredited with first and postgraduate degrees in supply chain management, with litany of certification programs and courses with international recognitions being offered, some of which are APICS, Association of Supply Chain Management, CIPS, which is CIPS, Chartered Institute of Procurement and Supply, recognized a UK based institution, but heavily recognized here in Nigeria. SILT, UK-based too, heavily recognized. It's also part of what APICS will can give, part of their certification. Chartered Institute of Logistics and Transport also gives this. And you also have Chartered Institute of Supply Chain and Management. And then you have other local training programs and workshops among so many colleges and institutes, too numerous to list here. So Nigeria is a wowing ground for supply chain. It's a place where you cannot stay in a day in Nigeria without supply chain activities. It's a big ground for supply chain, presenting big opportunities for anyone investing in supply chain in Nigeria, because even the government and the likes are purely and heavily in supply chain. You also have Institute of Supply Chain Management, you have Chartered Institute of Logistics and Transport, you have Nigerian Institute of Procurement, you have Supply Chain Management Association of Nigeria, and all more and more that we cannot begin to mention all here. So what is the success factor so far, you might ask, about Nigeria? Strong network, building relationship with suppliers, logistic providers, and other stakeholders. Adaptability, ability to navigate Nigeria's complex and dynamic business environment. Risk management is a very important aspect of supply chain. Risk management, identifying and mitigating risks such as cargo theft, corruption, and infrastructure challenges. Because you can have a 40-feet container en route to delivery, and then because of bad road, the container, the trailer skids or falls, and then have the entire goods or consignment damaged or almost damaged. So the risk management in Nigeria has really helped supply chain, with people running to insurance companies or banks to, share their risk or to hand over their risk to these institutions, these experts. So it's a big business. Insurance is a big business, especially supply chain insurance or types of insurance is a big business here in Nigeria and the African continent. Digital literacy, leveraging technology to improve supply chain visibility, efficiency, and accuracy. What about collaboration? Collaboration, which is working effectively with cross-functional teams, including sales, marketing, and finance. Sometimes we are asked, is sales and marketing part of supply chain? A lot of persons are on the divide, but I think that they are somewhat a part of supply chain, especially when it comes to marketing, which has to do with design, and supply chain has design as part of what makes up supply chain. Sales goes out to sell and then come back to tell the supply chain guys to distribute the items. So they must work collaboratively. Finance is there to also monitor and advise further. So there's a lot more collaborations between these different units and departments of businesses. Knowledge of local regulations, understanding and employing with and complying with the Nigerian laws, regulations, and standards. So one of the things that the Nigerian system has done is put in place regulations that are not that are friendly with supply chain and businesses too. So as long as you are able to get an expert who handles your regulatory and compliance department, then you don't have a problem. Just ensure that these laws, and just like every other country, that these laws are being managed properly. Cultural competencies, appreciating and navigating Nigeria's diverse cultural landscape. Continuous learning, staying up to date with global best practices, industry trends, and professional development. Nigeria has really done well, or Nigerians in supply chain has really done well with this. A lot of us doing business here are doing fantastically well with supply chain, trying to stay up to date with new technology, new ideas in supply chain, and then we go for refresher courses or training programs to assist. Having mentioned success stories or factors, it is important to mention that also there are challenges. There are challenges, and these challenges, it's not right to shy away from challenges, because in challenges, when you identify challenges, it becomes easier to manage them. So these challenges we will enumerate, and then so we can have it at the back of our mind that yes, these issues are there, but there is a way to navigate these challenges and or improve them. There are, however, serious challenges affecting supply chain in Nigeria, which has really impacted both the profession and the activities. Here are a few of them, which is infrastructure. One, we had mentioned this earlier when talking about the African continent. Poor road network, inadequate storage facility, and limited transportation options. We had mentioned whatever bedeviled or bedevils Africa, somewhat bedevils Nigeria. And then corruption, yes, bribes, extortion, and other forms of corruption, which has delayed shipments and increased importation costs doing businesses, because now you have to begin to think of markups. When you're thinking of markup, you have to begin to remember that when I'm looking at catalog prices, so if a catalog price is XYZ amount, you begin to think about 40% markup. A 40% markup or 50% markup will definitely impact how you sell and how people see your product. So it's important when doing business in Nigeria, you bear in mind this aspect of the challenge. Very important, corruption, because it's impact in other countries. Markup will probably be like 10% or 15%. In Nigeria, it's a whopping 40 to 50%. Bear that in mind, please. Security, cargo theft, robbery, and kidnapping are significant concern, big concerns. So sometimes you're moving from point A to point B because of insecurity in Africa, especially in Nigeria. It has become a big problem. You could be kidnapped, cargo could be stolen, or item could be stolen, robberies on the road and all that. These are part of the challenges on the African continent, especially Nigeria. Regulatory environment, complex and challenges regulations can create uncertainties. So sometimes unknowingly they create laws that seem to be a bit stifling to business climate. And when business is stifled somewhat, supply chain is stifled. Because like I did say earlier, supply chain and business are one and the same. They cannot be devolved. They are the same thing, because supply chain thrive where there is business, business thrive where there is supply chain. And limited technology adoption. We had mentioned that earlier, manual processes and lack of digitalization hinder efficiency. Skill gap, also mentioned, limited training and expertise in supply chain management. Like I did say, some persons are still not convinced that this is a skill that should be learned. But I did also mention in the success factors that, see, this is growing. A lot of people are doing so many courses, and then there is a great improvement with regards to upping skills with supply chain skills in Nigeria, especially Abuja, Lagos, and major cities of Nigeria. Dependence on imports. I mentioned that from the beginning, that Africa is an import-driven continent. Nigeria is one. High reliance on imported goods can lead to supply chain disruptions, because supply chain has two legs. It cannot stand only on importation. It has to stand on both legs, which is both importation, which has to do with logistics, movement of goods from one location to another. It also has to stand on the other leg, which is productive activities. So on this both leg, with supply chain, stand well and work properly and efficiently. So the two has to go pari passu. So this aspect, Nigeria currently also is trying their best with government interventions with regards to relaxing taxes and all that for productive capacity in Nigeria. Political instability, conflict, government changes, and policy uncertainty disrupt supply chain. So during elections, you have the government announcing no movement. So imagine if you have an item to dispatch from one location to another, you have to stay for a whole day or two, and elections happen within 2 weeks in Nigeria. And within these 2 weeks, you are going to pause whatever you have, because you are not certain things will go very well because of conflict, political conflict, parties fighting each other, and then you are not very sure of what next to do. And then so it becomes, and then what about conflict? There's some part of Nigeria, you don't work on Mondays. So how do you relate with that? And then you're a businessman and you need to have some meeting, hold some meetings, or move items on the Monday because there is expected time of delivery or arrival. But because of this day that is out of the picture, it is hampered. These are part of the challenges. These challenges, we are discussing a no-hold-barred scenarios in Nigeria, telling you what is actually happening. Technology adoption, we mentioned the manual processes and lack of digitalization and all that. But we have talked about the aspect where it is tough. But let us also look at, again, like we did with the African continent, the aspect Nigeria is doing fantastically well. These challenges, those challenges I did mention, is just for you to have at the back of your mind. It doesn't paint a gloomy picture. Nigeria is a fantastic place to do your businesses. I live in Nigeria for over 4 decades, and it's a great place to be. Growing economy, increasing demand for goods and services drives the need for effective supply chain. Nigeria is a growing economy. Currently, our GDP has rebounded to positives. So it's no longer in the negative where it was in minus. After COVID-19, we had some issues with growth, but currently I think it's about 3 to 4% growth rate. Infrastructure development, Nigeria is growing. There is more network being constructed. We have over 30,000 road network or thereabout, and then these are being developed. As we speak, most roads are being connected. There are major roads linking. There is a train. We are doing high-speed rail across the country. And then there are Lagos-Ibadan Expressway, current almost near completion. There is Currently, the one just initiated the Lagos, through the flank of Calabar down to the coastal regions. These are all to aid the supply chain and movement of goods and properties. There is flight, almost stable flight in Nigeria. And then technology adoption, of course, AI is here in Nigeria to stay, and a lot of businesses are adopting technology, and it's a big business in Nigeria. Technological advancement is really, really happening here. Trade, regional trade. Nigeria is reaching out to other countries, and being a leader of ECOWAS, Nigeria is set and ready and looking out to allow other countries to, of course, currently there is a temporary ban to the borders, but that is going to be opened in no time. But Nigeria is also reaching out, and this was done because people come into Nigeria, ensuring that the right things flow in and not a dumping site. And then once this is fixed, Nigeria will return to what we used to be, together with the African countries, ECOWAS specifically. Diversification, growing importance of non-oil sectors such as agriculture and manufacturing. So Nigeria is currently investing heavily on agriculture. Manufacturing is on the rise. A lot of more bottling companies are coming in, and a lot of more companies that are into tractor and other equipment are flowing into the country, and Nigeria is not doing badly with regards to agriculture, which is contributing about 18 to 20% to I think 15% of the economy. We have the largest sea and airports. Nigeria has the busiest ports in Africa with FTZs, along with technological advancements. We have Lekki Free Trade Zones, and then the one in Calabar. We have the only the seaport, and we have the Apapa Seaport, with being manned by Nigerian Ports Authority. So all of this, because of a lot of productive activities and importation. You have very busy airports, the Nnamdi Azikiwe International Airport and the Murtala Mohammed International Airport here in Lagos. These two cities, especially Lagos, has more of the productive businesses or activities going on. And then you will be much happy to come into the cities and do your business. There is largely security in Nigeria, especially with regards to Lagos, Abuja, and some other cities. The major cities, you have security. Digitalization, increasing adoption of digital technologies, sustainability, growth focus on environmentally friendly practices like Nigeria is adopting. Because of lack of enough electricity, Nigeria is adopting lots of ecologically friendly options like solar energy, like inverters and all that, reducing emissions from generators and all that. So that is currently on the rise in the country, and it is being encouraged by government while they fix the power sector, while they continue to fix the power sector. Regionalization, increasing importance of regional trade and cooperation. Then I did mention e-commerce earlier, and how last mile delivery has been quite on the rise in Nigeria. And then 4 FDIs, foreign direct investments in Nigeria, and where are these sectors you would like to really invest, that I can assure you that investing in these areas will give you your money, and then that these areas also deals more with the supply chain activities. Agriculture, critical for food security and economic growth. Manufacturing, a growing sector. It's a growing sector, particularly in food processing and consumer goods. And you and I would agree, or you would agree with me, that manufacturing has a lot to do with supply chain activities. I was in a manufacturing company for over 17 years, and I was in both manufacturing operations department and also in the supply chain. And I can tell you, if I tell you what supply chain activities going on in these manufacturing companies, you will know that Nigeria is a big place for supply chain. Retail, expanding middle class. The middle class, Nigerian middle class is growing, and then because the middle class and urbanization is happening, people are having more resource to request, to purchase and procure. And then this drive demand for consumer goods. Oil and gas, dominant industry, like you all are aware, with opportunities for supply chain optimization. So these are areas you can actually invest. In conclusion, by understanding these challenges, opportunities, best practices, and trends, business can really develop effective supply chain strategies in Nigeria. It's a great place to invest. It's a great place with lots of productive activities. It's a great place with lots of supply chain activities, a place where supply chain now has degree accreditation, now has postgraduate. You can have your master's in supply chain, master's in logistics, and all that. And there are litany of programs, both public and private institutions, where supply chain certifications are happening. And Nigeria is a wet ground. It's a very fertile ground for supply chain, the Africa. Thank you. We can entertain questions and answer briefly before I hand over mic back to Sheikh.
Yeah, so thank you. Very interesting and insightful. I was just following you, what you are saying, especially those challenges and also followed by the opportunities. Okay, so I think you covered majority of, and you try to be very transparent and you try to be very realistic. Okay, so that is something which is very good. Now, taking forward, how the things will shape up in course of time, Alan? Like, for example, if somebody like us, we would like to introduce our products and solutions to Africa, and especially through Nigeria, apart from all those challenges. So what is the way forward? So what do you advise? What is the timeline that we may expect some change? I know the change will come sooner or later, but what is your advice from the time point of view and then from the step-by-step approach point of view?
Okay, Sheikh, I kind of was straining to hear you properly. If you can rephrase the question, I know you asked something like the time frame and all that, and step-by-step advice.
You covered all the challenges. You covered the opportunities in Africa and in Africa in general and Nigeria in particular. You elaborated it very nicely. So we understand the whole challenges, opportunities, and then what are the take care. But I just want to see how to proceed. So in form of timeline, okay, so expected government regulations kind of thing, what is the, like in next 3 to 5 years, these are the things going to happen. So this is the best way to step in for the foreign investors. Okay, so what is the advice to actionable advice? Okay, in general, yes, doing a business in Africa is something very lucrative for everybody. There is no question about it, given the challenges and opportunities. But what is the best way to step in, like step-by-step approach? What do you think?
Okay, thank you very much. Like I did say earlier, Nigeria is a great place for supply chain. So it depends on what aspect you're looking at, if it is supply chain training or business. If it is for business, of course, Nigeria is all set for business. But for supply chain, I think the area you're needing to focus more on is on training. You need to come in with more supply chain schools or academy. There are not much like in other countries academies with international accreditation or certification. There are only a few, and then I tell you, Nigerians are yearning and prefer to have accreditation that has international recognition. And then Nigerians like titles. So when you see an Allan Klein and you see all the titles around, and then these titles are recognized, this is what Nigerians actually would prefer. But we have a few of that. We don't have much of it. Something like the ISO. ISO came in, Cognizant, and others came into Nigeria, and a whole lot came in. So on the Nigerian regulations, all you just need to do is to have a Nigerian who is somewhat known, somewhat popular, who can guide you. With a guide, especially a Nigerian who is somewhat popular with Nigerian laws and who is also known, you would almost find it seamless. There's nothing really deep or major as to setting up supply chain academy or doing business in Nigeria. All you just need to do is to do your feasibility in terms of marketability. So the area you're going, the product you're bringing, how is it acceptable? And I tell you, acceptance in Nigeria is very big because the population is big, and the Nigerians are not. We don't have a population that can easily be defined. You don't have, Nigeria is not a population that you can say this is how they will react. Nigerians will take anything. So you can sell anything in Nigeria, do any business in Nigeria, and make your money as long as you're within the ambit of the law. The Nigerian economy welcomes any business.
Okay, so for similar, I think the same thing is applicable for software companies like us. Okay, it is the same. I think it's the same assumptions are applicable, I believe.
Yes, for software, Nigeria is also growing with software, and there are lots of Nigerians going into data management and all that. So, and most organizations are dealing more with data. You know, part of the problem most companies have is ERPs are expensive. Employee resource enterprise resource planning are quite expensive to manage. So most smaller companies that are doing that are into manual processes, if they can find companies that can manage their data and software, and they will pay less to what these ERPs are charging. They charge heavily in dollars, and then most companies are then using Excel. But if they have alternative capturing of their numbers that is not very expensive, they will definitely latch onto it. So I assure you, software and data management is a big business in Nigeria because you are having more of young Nigerians being tech savvy and really, really interested in doing, in knowing. When it is software, you will do very well in Nigeria. Very, very well. We have Decagon in Nigeria. Decagon started not quite a long time ago, and they are doing fantastically well. They are now offering, you know, what you do is get a university, connect to a university. Nigerians like institutions that has connections with international universities, and so you can have that connection, that affiliation, get such affiliations, and then you run your programs. You can, with time, you can improve from diploma programs to degree engineering or software engineering programs and the likes.
Perfect. So any final thoughts? So excellent presentation. Any final thoughts, Allan, for all the audience participants?
So my final thoughts are just a few things. All has been said is that Nigeria is a great place to do your business. Nigeria is a fantastic ground. where you don't, the population is not definable. It's not a population you can say they will react to this like this and react to that like that. It's a population that welcome whatever you bring in, as long as it is something that will improve their lives and within the ambit of the law. So it's a great place for supply chain. It is the biggest supply chain activity on the African continent. I assure you that, and it's a friendly economy, a friendly country. It is not a country you come and people treat you with disdain, with disrespect. It is a country that welcomes investors. So, but just bear in mind the challenges and find a way to navigate through those challenges. Thank you very much.
So thank you, Allan. Thank you, Allan Klein. Really an excellent, insightful presentation. And you try to cover everything with a very clear idea of what to do and what not to do and what are the key challenges. Okay, so thank you very much, Dr. Klein, for joining. And with the time constraint, we finished 1 hour. So we, any questions from the participants, we collect you and share you through offline, and you can always answer them. Okay. So thank you very much, Allan, for joining all the way, and it was really insightful presentation. So give Dr. Allan Klein a big hand, and I on behalf of participants and on behalf of organizers, I would like to thank you, Allan, once again. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Sheikh. Thank you.